Welcome, friends, back to another episode of Mind Games. I'm Guerin Emig, host of the show on the Sellout Crowd Network. Write columns a lot of the times on the Sooners and the Cowboys, occasionally talk about the Sooners and the Cowboys. Do it weekly with a special guest on the show. We thank you very much for watching and listening, however you consume my show and my colleagues on the Sellout Network. We thank you for your attention. We know that you have choices when it comes to what you read, what you listen to, and watch. And the fact that you've taken time to help us here at Sellout is not something we take for granted. So appreciate that. Certainly appreciate digging into the head of our guest this week, doing some thinking and talking with Brett McMurphy, the National College Football Insider for Action Network. Brett is someone I'm sure a lot of our listeners and viewers are familiar with from his years of being a National College Football Insider. He has ties to Oklahoma State, as it turns out, and a little more indirectly to Oklahoma. So we're going to talk plenty about Bedlam with that game coming up very, very soon. Brett, first of all, thank you for joining us. Number one.
Yeah, look, Barry Trammell and Jenny Carlson reached out to me. I said, no way, I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to Guerin. So, yeah, sorry I had to push those guys off, but I saved myself for you. But no, appreciate you having me on.
It's a first to be thought of for me ahead of Barry and Jenny. So I will try to treat you as well as they'll treat you when you grace them with your presence down the road. Quick, bio, Reader's Digest version, if you please. Let everyone know you've got the journalism background, but when did you make the leap to National College Football Insider? That sounds like pretty serious business.
Yeah, I actually started, I did journalism through high school with mighty Yukon Millers. I think we're kind of struggling this year. I've been watching a little high school football online. But yeah, from Yukon, went to Oklahoma State, got into journalism. After that, I actually went to my first 2 years out of college, Odessa, Texas, and I covered Odessa Permian. So if you've read the book Friday Night Lights, seen the movie, the TV show, the Broadway play, the parade, whatever, I actually covered those kids as sophomores. And then I got a job in Tampa with the Tampa Tribune. And then Buzz Bissinger swept in behind me and he became the billionaire. And I went on covering high schools in Tampa. And so I just gradually progressed to colleges and, covered the University of South Florida beat for a while and then moved on from the Tampa Tribune to CBS Sports, ESPN, and 1,000 other joints. And now I'm at Action Network, still doing college football, still living in Tampa. So can't complain. Cool.
Yeah, still breaking stories, making calls, sending some of the most delicious tweets that are on social media for us to devour every week. So I guess we can say then you laid the groundwork for one of the most important pieces of sports literature of all time. Then you did the hard work so that Buzz can come in and
exactly. Yeah. My buddies tell me I'm sitting in a bar in Odessa, Texas, drinking dollar Coronas saying, hey, I got a great idea for a book, Friday Night Lights. Screw it. Give me another Corona. Somebody overheard me and ran with it. But that was an unbelievable experience for me. And I literally learned more about covering a college beat, covering Permian High School those 2 years. It was incredible. It's like covering, you really can't put it in perspective, but it's like covering a professional team at a high school level. And the town just, was all in on that school. And it was just amazing. But Buzz actually called me when he was doing the book just to kind of pick my brain to see if there's anything he was missing. Obviously, he had it covered down to a T. But it was an unreal experience. And also, I don't know how people think the people in Odessa are presented in the book if you go back and read it, but they are simply the nicest people on the face of the earth, bar none.
Yeah, I believe that. And I can relate. By the way, I'm coming to you from Tulsa. When you talk about covering a high school team as if it were a professional outfit, I don't know if the suburban powers here in Tulsa, Bixby, Jenks, Union, Broken Arrow, quite qualify for professional, but certainly small college. It get past small college about 10 years ago, Brett. So it's not Odessa Permian necessarily, but I know about the culture you're talking about for sure. All right, let's dive in then. College football. One of the things, no secret to, again, anyone familiar with your work, is one of your many niches is what you do every early December, where you you break bowl news as to who's going where on Selection Sunday for college football, if you want to call it that day. The playoff is announced, and then you spend the rest of the afternoon letting everyone know, fans and media alike, where their favorite teams or the teams they're covering are headed. And let's just go ahead and get this over with out of the gate. You like a lot of your colleagues on the national front put together bowl projections every week, and you do have a Big 12 team in your 14 playoff, but it's not Oklahoma. And so I'll let listeners, viewers of a Sooner ilk down a little easy out of the gate and give you a chance to identify whether you think the Longhorns have staying power to make the playoff, and why that is.
Yeah, well, I actually moved Texas into my Final Four this week, but when I do the bowl projections, I actually did them before the news broke about Quinn Ewers being out for several weeks. I don't feel that good about it. I'll have to see how they do this week against BYU without Ewers. So I may move Texas out of that spot. And this is not a slide on Oklahoma. I base that on the only way Oklahoma gets to a playoff, other than mass chaos where the top 3 or 4 teams all lose 2 games. The only way Oklahoma gets to the playoff is 13-0.
Right.
I don't see any scenario where 12-1 Oklahoma, even as a Big 12 champ, gets in. Strength of schedule, non-conference schedule, ranked opponents, all that stuff factor into it. Oklahoma's in a disadvantage compared with the teams they're going to get compared with. So that's why I had Texas up there. I believe that if with a healthy Ewers, that Texas would win the rematch. Again, I'm taking this strictly from a football perspective. If the Texas-Oklahoma game was played 10 times and you had the same statistical breakdown that you had in that game, Texas probably wins 7 out of 10 times. So why would I say that? They outgained Oklahoma. They had 3 turnovers. Oklahoma had none. Texas had a 1st and goal that they didn't score. So you play that out 10 times, and more times than often, Texas would win the game. But still, credit to Oklahoma. They won the game. Right. That's what counts. That's what happens moving forward. But so the reason I don't have Oklahoma in my Final Four is I believe they have to go 13-0. And Guerin, I'm not confident at this point right now that they can do it.
Yeah. And that's perfectly reasonable. And there is the idea, not the idea, I think, near fact that if you're going to play a team twice, better to drop the first game in October, right? Than wait until a conference championship rematch. And in this season, especially with Oklahoma's schedule, non-conference didn't do them any favors. The Big 12 outside of Texas, although OSU's making a charge, not going to help, I don't think,
right.
In terms of quality wins. And so, yeah, it does leave you with it's all on the table nationally, assuming OU shows up unbeaten still in Jerry World, and assuming Texas is there to play them. It is still there's no recourse but to win that game if you're Oklahoma.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Texas has the Alabama win that helps them, but still, Texas is not getting in unless they're 12-1 and Big 12 champs. Right. So I want to be clear with that. Oklahoma, even if Texas loses and falters down and Oklahoma plays somebody else in the Big 12 title game, 100% locked in. 13-0 Oklahoma, I don't care who they play in the Big 12 title game, is in the college football playoff unless there are 4 other undefeated teams. Then you get the comparison and the breakdown. But they will not be picked. A one-loss team will not jump a 13-0 Big 12 Oklahoma champ.
Okay. More positive news, positive vibes for our Sooner audience, our Sooner listeners. You do believe, it would appear, just based on your AP ballot, and you are an Associated Press voter, that you think that Oklahoma, even looking a little sluggish and beating UCF in a surprisingly close game last week in Norman, you had them ranked as high as 2, right? After they beat the Longhorns?
Yeah, after the Texas win. And look, and I'm glad you asked that, because a lot of people, I explain it, they probably still don't understand it. But yeah, I do my AP poll, I do my bowl projections. They're 2 different things. My AP poll is based on a snapshot of what has happened up to that point. It's not a projection of how I think the teams will finish the year. It's not a projection of how good these teams are supposed to be. It's simply, what have you done for me up to this point? Oklahoma's win against Texas is arguably one of the best wins of the season. So yeah, I moved them up to number 2. Well, then the next week they struggle against UCF. Very fortunate to win that game. They did win the game, so I did drop them down a little bit after that. So when you look at my bowl projections, that's what I think is going to happen down the road.
Right.
So that's why people will wonder, why does he have OU number 2 one week, but he doesn't have OU in his college football playoff? Yeah. It's because up to this point, last week anyway, OU I thought deserved to be number 2. And that's, next Tuesday, I don't know if a lot of your viewers realize this or not, next Tuesday, Halloween, will be the first ranking of the college football playoff. Right. I think if there are no upsets this week of the top 5 or 6 teams, I think the committee puts Ohio State at number 1. Why would they do that? Because they have 2 wins against teams that are currently in the top 25, Notre Dame and Penn State. Nobody else has more than 1. Georgia, by the way, has 0. I think Georgia won't be any higher than 3. Where's Georgia been every week in the AP poll? They've been number 1. I voted Ohio State number 1 this week. If you ask me, I would probably pick Georgia to beat Ohio State. But until Georgia beats a ranked team, I can't rank Georgia higher than 3 right now. That's just how I look at it. Other people look at it differently.
While we're on this, let's hear about the top 4. If you said Ohio State in 1, Georgia 3. Again, barring upsets this weekend. If everyone wins the games they're supposed to this weekend, Florida State.
I think Florida State comes in at number 2. They've got the win against LSU. They have the win against Duke. They have 2 top 25 wins. Right. Obviously, I think Ohio State's top 25 wins are more impressive than Florida State. And then basically, again, you're trying to predict how 13 people are going to vote. So then after that, you've got Michigan, who is, seal clubbed literally everybody they played this year. They haven't played any ranked opponents. I don't know how many of the teams they played actually have winning records for that fact. You've got Georgia up there. You've got Oklahoma, who has the win against Texas. Where are they going to put Oklahoma? You've got Washington with the win against Oregon. I mean, I do think that some people may vote Washington and Oklahoma ahead of Georgia and Michigan because of their wins against ranked teams. So I feel we'll see. I don't tell anyone I've been wrong before, but I do really think if there's no upsets, Ohio State will be number 1. I think Florida State will be number 2. And then that 3, 4, 5, 6 mix is going to be fascinating to see where they slot all those guys in, because do you vote based on what has been accomplished through the season, or do you vote on your preconceived notions that, well, Georgia's the 2-time defending champ. They're really good, but they haven't played anybody. Michigan's beat everybody, but they haven't played everybody. Well, what do we do with OU and Washington? They have 2 of the best wins of the season. So that's what makes college football so great is, you have so many differing opinions. Unfortunately, we're not on a selection committee, so we don't get to determine the playoff.
A lot of hot tempers, a lot of different tempers, different feelings when it comes to college football. You know this as well as anyone, Brett, and therefore the caveat. And I think you shared it on your Twitter feed or your social media channel, even perhaps in the last 24 hours. I don't know if it was this morning or very recently. A reminder in case the Sooners don't make. Let's say they win at Kansas, and that's an if, not a for sure.
It's going to be a tough game, yeah.
Yeah, it is. We'll talk about that. But if they do get out of Lawrence still unbeaten and they don't show up in the top 4 next week, the caveat that you shared was don't go overboard with this, right? The only thing that matters is what we see on, again, Selection Sunday, so to speak.
Yeah, and again, that's, I think, the most frustrating thing for fans is they see these rankings and they think that these teams are slotted in certain spots. So then if they win the following week, then they should remain in the same spot. Yeah. It doesn't happen that way. They do a clean slate every week, which basically these rankings, look, I worked at ESPN. It's no secret. These rankings are done for TV. They're TV ratings. It's a TV show. That's all it is. Yeah. So don't put a lot into these first 5 rankings. The only one, like you said, that matters is Sunday, the final Sunday, December 2nd or 3rd.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's dig into the Sooners just a little bit. And before we talk anything specific about the matchup with Kansas Saturday, and it is interesting. You didn't see this coming, did you? I know I didn't. I didn't know what to make of Oklahoma after Venable's first season, going 6-7. I figured they'd be better, but beyond that, I have no idea. So, anything really surprise you about what's going on in Norman?
I'm surprised they're undefeated, to be very honest.
Hmm.
I believe their over under win total in Vegas was 9.5.
Hmm.
And you looked at the schedule, and other than Texas, yeah, they were projected before the season to be favored in every game but Texas, and that's what's going to happen. They're going to be favored in every game except for Texas. But to win those last year, by the way, sorry to bring up bad memory, Sooner fans. Last year, before the season, Venable's first season, Oklahoma was projected to be favored in all 12 games. They went 6-6. So that just because you're projected to be
Right.
favored or power rated to be favored doesn't mean anything. Yeah, I was one that wasn't sure how Venables would do as a head coach. And his first year, I didn't expect Oklahoma to struggle that much, but they did. This year, it seems like, things have been figured out. They're obviously doing a lot better. Again, the scare against UCF, the SMU game was probably a lot closer than people expected. But bottom line is, at the end of the year, nobody's going to care if you only beat UCF by 2 or you struggled against SMU. They're going to look at your win-loss record, and they've done tremendous. Dylan Gabriel. We talk about Oklahoma runs a table 13-0. If Oklahoma goes 13-0, Dylan Gabriel's going to be in New York City.
Hmm.
Uh, I really believe that. The Heisman has become the and I vote for it. I don't know if you do, but it's that
Yeah,
other people, not me. The Heisman has become the best player on one of the best teams that has one of the best games, one of the last 2 weeks of the regular
that's
season,
right. Oh, that's
or
right.
in the conference championship game. So that's good
Right.
news for Gabriel and Oklahoma. But yeah, your original question, I thought when I saw the 9.5 wins, I thought probably 10-2, maybe 9-3. I did not expect them to go undefeated. I thought obviously they would lose to Texas, and then Oklahoma has had some upsets along the way. Iowa State most notably seems to pick off the Sooners when they're monster underdogs. But so far, so good for OU, and now they go to Kansas, which I think is going to be a tricky game.
Hmm.
OU's 9-10 point favorite.
That seems a
You know,
little high.
yeah, Jalen Daniels, Big 12 offensive preseason player of the year, hasn't played the last few weeks. He's, questionable or doubtful, depending on who you talk to. Jason Bean's still done pretty well. I think what helps the Sooners is Kansas's defense has not been one of the strongest in the conference, and I think OU can
Right.
take advantage of that. So I think this will be a high scoring game. I think OU's more talented. Longest it looks like that the Texas hangover, I think is gone after UCF. So I think Oklahoma should survive this, which if they do, and Oklahoma State takes care of business against Cincinnati, will set up an epic Bedlam finale, at least for the next, 10 to 15 years.
Isn't that interesting? Gosh, it wasn't, but maybe a few hours ago, it feels like around here anyway, Brett, that we were thinking, what in the heck is Mike Gundy going to do to squeeze 6 wins out of this bunch? How are they going to even stay on the same field in their potentially final Bedlam against Oklahoma? And here we are.
I
Here
know.
he is again, doing what no one thought conceivable. Gundy, taking a team that left for dead against South Alabama and then against Iowa State and 2-2, and you're thinking, where is this going to end? And they're 5-2. They've done since then is beaten Kansas State and Kansas and West Virginia, and in all 3 games, you were probably leaning the other way as a neutral. And they've got a guy now. You talk about guys angling for New York, or you talk about Dylan Gabriel doing that at OU. I suppose there's a scenario now where Ollie Gordon keeps cranking up, Barry Sanders-esque numbers and finds his way into at least a conversation to get a trip. So I don't know, man. I mean, is it Lawrence, Stillwater, Provo? If those are the 3 trips left for the Sooners before a potential rematch with Texas, where do you go there? I mean, is it Stillwater most dangerous to Provo least, or what do you think?
BYU's got a decent record, but I don't think they're as good as the record shows. Like they beat Texas Tech. Texas Tech's down to the third quarterback. I think Joey McGuire is going to call you, as soon as we get done, see if you have any eligibility left.
That'd be a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're really in a tough spot. So I mean BYU, playing in Provo will be cool and all that, and that could be difficult. But I just think OU is so much more talented and so much better than BYU. Obviously, the Oklahoma State game I think should be the toughest. But with this series, and look, I grew up an OU fan. I was talking to you before we did this. I grew up an Oklahoma fan. My parents still live in Oklahoma. They're OU fans. My sister went to OU. I'm the black sheep in the orange and black sheep in the family. I went to Oklahoma State. But it seems like in the history of this rivalry, whenever it's like Oklahoma State appears that they've got a really good shot to maybe compete and beat Oklahoma, more times than not, they don't. It's almost like the years where they supposedly have no chance.
Yeah.
That's when they pull off the upset. But certainly, look, I'll be very honest. I'm an Oklahoma State grad, proud Poke. When Oklahoma State lost those back-to-backs to South Alabama and Iowa State, I called my dad. I talked to him every week. I said, don't be surprised if OSU goes 2-10. I'm like, Oklahoma State is not going to win another game. I'm like, right. I don't know what in the hell's going on. But hey, give Gundy 100% of the credit. They had that bye week. He got some things figured out. And look, I think most people, at least the people that do power ratings and, all this analytic stuff, they look at Kansas State as probably the third best team in the conference. Oklahoma State, handled Kansas State. Obviously, they got some benefits from turnovers. They took care of Kansas. They got revenge. I guess they're going to be printing up the state of Kansas state champ T-shirts for the Pokes. But yeah, and then Gundy's going to be an underdog against Oklahoma. And I've tweeted it. I think it's 9-1 now, 10-1, 9-1, 10-1. In Oklahoma State's last, we'll say 10 games as a home underdog, Oklahoma State has won 9 of those games. I'm not talking about covering the spread. I'm talking about pulling off the upset in 9 of the last 10 games as a home underdog. They will be a home underdog against the Sooners. The atmosphere is going to be incredible because, as I've reported and a lot of other people have reported, this is going to be the last Bedlam for, at least a dozen years, maybe longer, until both schools can figure out when they can play or when they decide hey, maybe we don't need to play extra group of 5 team. Maybe we can play our in-state rival, but I'm not too hopeful for that. But I kind of rambled on about this, but I'll be very honest. I thought the Pokes were headed for 2-10, and now I'm like, you know what? Maybe they can get to Dallas for the Big 12 title game if things break right.
No, I know. We were talking to Rashad Owens, OSU's receiver, after they beat K-State, and we were, throwing out, you Texas this, that, you watch the game, that kind of thing, and it's said, watch the game, because that was OSU won that game on Friday night. Sooners and Longhorns played on Saturday, so many OSU players admitted to sitting down and watching. They should have. It was an interesting game. But Rashad was sort of being analytical about it. And at one point I said, well, isn't it weird? I mean, you got Oklahoma on your schedule, but you're not supposed to play Texas. So wasn't that kind of strange not having to scout both teams for a change? And you kind of looked at me and said, well, I mean, we could play them, right? In Arlington, right? For the Big 12 championship. And you just, bless his heart, right? Is your reaction. But here we are, right? And two wins later. And Ollie Gordon and Alan Bowman and whatever Gundy's doing is, the resident witch doctor. They are one Bedlam win away from making this very, very real.
Yeah, and they would have the head-to-head against Oklahoma. So if they both finish with the same number of losses in conference,
right,
they would get the nod. So the good news, for Oklahoma State fans would be, they would have a shot at getting to the Big 12 title game. The bad news for Big 12 fans is you're basically maybe eliminating the Big 12 from the college football playoff talk.
Yeah. You said that you were an OSU, you are an OSU alum, that you grew up an OU fan. You've admitted, therefore, your investment into Bedlam from sort of both sides of the rivalry. How do you feel about what's going on, Brett? How do you feel about this really being it?
It's I'll sum it up in 2 words. It sucks. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And look, I understand the thinking behind both schools. I've talked to Chad, I've talked to Joe. I understand Oklahoma State's position. I understand Oklahoma's position. It's just unfortunate that both schools cannot figure out a way to have this game played. With that being said, I understand why it's not played, because the schedules are made out from now until the year 3000. I don't know why, but they got to schedule 900 years in advance. That's just how colleges do it these days. And so you're locked up with all these big profile non-conference games. And look, these are some monster games coming up. Oklahoma State's got Oregon and I think Nebraska. Oklahoma's got, I can't remember, Notre Dame, Alabama, whoever they have. These are big games, but the thing is the scheduling philosophy, and it's not just OSU and OU, it's basically the majority of the Power 5 schools, is that you play one major non-conference Power 5 opponent, and then you play a smaller Group 5 opponent. Mm-hmm. And so basically you would have to cancel all of these future Power 5 opponents because nobody in their right mind is going to schedule 2 Power 5 non-conference opponents, especially if you've got 9 conference games like Oklahoma State will in the Big 12. The SEC is going to be at 8 games. I think eventually that gets moved up to 9 games. And so, it's horrible. And, Oklahoma State and Oklahoma's not the first rivalry that this has happened to. I mean, Texas A&M and Texas, that rivalry ended. Now it's going to resume because we'll be in the same conference, West Virginia, Pitt. Right. We can go on and on because of conference realignment. And I know people want to put blame on, well, it's Oklahoma State's fault because they won't change their schedule, or it's Oklahoma's fault because they left for the SEC. I mean, it depends on, whether you're wearing orange or red, who you're going to put the blame on. The blame is on both parties. I understand what Gundy says when he's like, look, Oklahoma, they chose to leave the conference. Mm-hmm. But Oklahoma State could say, you know what, we'll drop the Group 5 team and we'll play Oklahoma if Oklahoma would play that game and put it on the Sooners and see if they would do that. Ultimately, one other thing, and look, I'm an Oklahoma State grad, proud OSU alum. Right. But what drives me bananas is when Oklahoma State fans, when OU left for the SEC, and Oklahoma State fans were so upset that OU left. There was administrators, politicians, why Oklahoma should have told us they were leaving. Oklahoma shouldn't have done that. Oklahoma should have took Oklahoma State with them. I'm like, are you crazy? I mean, look, I'm an OSU guy, but if the roles were reversed, Oklahoma State would have had no requirement to notify OU, nor would they have been expected to do that. So I understand emotions get involved. It's a great rivalry. They call it Bedlam for a reason. And it's to sum it up as I started out, it sucks that this is going to be the last one we're going to see for a long time. I know, Chad and Joe are both working to see when they can get this thing going again, but just with the requirements and the commitments for their schedules, I'm afraid it's going to be a while.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I'm a Kansas grad. The KU Missouri
Missouri. Yeah.
I was about to say the KU Missouri rivalry, which literally goes back to bloodshed from the Civil War. I mean, people who aren't familiar have no idea how far
they
back
invented fire, and then the next year Kansas played at Missouri. I remember that.
Yeah, and when Missouri, similar to what Oklahoma has done, hightailed it for the SEC, left Kansas, hanging, so to speak, there was a lot of animosity out of Lawrence. And I think it was best represented by what Bill Self, we're talking basketball now, not football, but since it's Kansas, we default to basketball. And anytime Self was asked about it for years, well, they're the ones that went to the SEC.
Yeah,
right? I
he
mean,
said and I know Bill very well from Oklahoma,
right.
my days at Oklahoma State. He's flat out said, we're not playing Missouri. Now they've played him since, but it's just, and look, I cover a lot of conference realignment. I've been fortunate to break a lot of stories with conference realignment.
Hmm.
I hate conference realignment. I hate
Hmm.
what it's done to the sport.
Yeah.
Everyone's chasing the dollar. And so that's what happens when you have all these rivalries get ended.
Yeah. Well, KU to finish that story. KU is playing Missouri again in basketball, but it's taken until now for it to become
Right.
a thing again. So there's your sliver of light. If you're into Bedlam and you're into tradition, there may be a time that this happens again, but you may also have to wait a while. Brett, the fact that here's where we are with conference realignment. The best league, at least, or maybe, well, I don't know, best or certainly most entertaining league with all of the great quarterbacks is out in the pack.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a pack,
Yeah.
right? To,
I
to
would argue, Guerin, that the Pac-12, the top 6 teams in their league are better than any top 6 teams in any other
Mhm.
conference by far. They've got 6 teams in the top 25 right now. You've got Washington, Oregon are playoff contenders. I mean, everyone's forgetting about Utah and Oregon State. They only have one loss. If they run the table, they're going to
Yeah.
be in the mix. And yeah, it's unfortunate that this league's going to split up. Some of them to the Big Ten, some of them to the Big 12. Some of them to the ACC. That's
Yeah.
another
Good luck.
story.
Some of them, good luck to you.
Yeah, and then you got poor Oregon State and Washington State, kind of fending for themselves, trying to do whatever they can, do
Yeah.
their little two-step with the Mountain West and figure something out there. But yeah, I mean, just because of geography, I think Jonathan Smith of Oregon State's the most underrated coach in the country,
Uh-huh.
and I hate that this is happening to them.
Oh,
And it's based on nothing other than where the school's located. It's not how good you are. It's not the product you
hmm.
put on the field or anything else.
Yep. Yep. And how many eyeballs are on your games?
TV
And obviously,
viewers. Yep.
yeah, people aren't watching Oregon State; they're watching Oregon if, in that part of the country for sure. Hey, I'm contractually obligated now, I think, as a columnist, a media member, a podcast host, out of Tulsa or Oklahoma. It literally the verbiage bred in my contract is pile on to Lincoln Riley wherever you can. And so real quick, I'm going to do this with your help. Another tweet from your social media channel this week, and I want to make sure I read what I read. Lincoln's record through 22 games is the same as Clay Helton's. Is that right?
Yes. They're both 17-5. Um,
Wow.
so here I'm gonna give you I'll try to make this quick. Lincoln Riley has made some missteps at USC off the field. He didn't allow any of his players to talk to the media after they lost to Utah. First time in 100 years at USC. You cannot do that. As a college coach, you simply cannot do that. Um, that is not a good look. Obviously, they're having defensive issues like they've had at Oklahoma. Oklahoma fans are loving that. In fact, the last 2 weeks, I've tweeted perfect day for OU fans because OU won and UCF, UCF, USC lost.
Right.
But on the flip side, when he left Oklahoma and the Oklahoma fans called him a traitor, and people were texting me, can he really take players with him? Can he take the assistant coaches? Then I realized this has never happened to Oklahoma in like forever. That they didn't realize this happens to the other 132 schools literally every 5 years. And so I understand the Oklahoma, the hurt, the frustration, the betrayal. But look, guys, it's a business. You can't expect what
Yeah.
you had was special with Stoops being there forever. What you had was special with Switzer being there forever.
Hmm.
I guess most OU fans are too young to remember the salad days of John Blake and Schnellenberger and Gary Gibbs, which Oklahoma State fans call the golden era. But yeah, I mean, come on, it's a business. He took
Yeah.
another job. Yeah, it's bad, but it happens everywhere, and I just that kind of turned my stomach the way OU fans were playing him out to be a traitor and all this. Look, coaches leave every year for another job. It's not the end of the world. And yes, it's not against the NCAA rules to take players with you or take coaches with you. It happens at the other 132 schools. It just took you guys 200 years to finally experience it.
My default is when I'm up against this mindset, do yourself a favor for your peace of mind. Enjoy 7-0. Enjoy your 7-0 more than back-to-back losses at SC, right? I mean,
yeah,
just for your
they're
own
out of the
peace of
playoff.
mind.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I honestly, Brett, I think a lot of the angst and rancor, bitterness, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it goes back as far as his original decision for sure, but we were in a much different place a year ago with OU headed toward a losing season, Caleb Williams headed toward a Heisman Trophy, right, and Lincoln sort of reaping the benefits. Didn't reap what he wanted to, but still had a pretty good year and got himself another Heisman Trophy to show. So I think that it's not just what he did. I'm not rationalizing it, justifying it. It's not just the moment. It's what happened a year ago in the aftermath. And
Oh yeah. And
yeah,
I know the timing. The timings, there's never a good time to leave any
mm-hmm,
coach, we
mm-hmm,
can go down the laundry list of coaches that have left. There's never a good time. It's always, well, you didn't tell the team. You can't tell the team. The agents leak it. It gets out. It's impossible to tell the team. But look, if OU fans are so concerned about Lincoln and wanting to beat Lincoln, Guerin, I have a solution right here. I'll break it on your podcast. Lose to Oklahoma State, and then you can play USC in the Alamo Bowl. It'll be a ratings bonanza.
San Antonio, I'm not sure could survive that. Man, I'm serious. That's a Spurs.
USC would not play that game. I guarantee the Pac-12 would notify the Alamo Bowl and tell them USC is not playing Oklahoma. The same way you brought up Kansas and Missouri, the same way Missouri notified bowl officials, multiple bowl officials, we are not playing Kansas in a bowl game. So unfortunately, in the non-playoff bowls and in the non-New Year's Six games, the teams can dictate who they play or don't play. So as much as I'd love to see OU and USC match up in a Alamo Bowl game or any other non-playoff bowl game, as long as Lincoln's there, it ain't gonna happen. As much as I'd love it to.
Gosh, I mean seriously, I would worry about the city of San Antonio. I'm not kidding. if that were to happen, that's an NBA town, right? They don't have college football. I mean, well, there may be some Texas X's there, some A&M core members.
UTSA Roadrunners, baby.
Well, yeah, they've done some, but it's just not what they have no idea.
Right.
As of now, real quick, you've got OSU in that game against SC, right?
Because I think look, the way Oklahoma State's trending, they get the nod over Kansas State. We'll have to see. I think it's either going to be, if OU and Texas hold serve, I think it's going to be either Oklahoma State or Kansas State in the Alamo Bowl. And I think USC, no matter what their record is, unless they lose out, I don't think that's realistic. But even if they go 9-3, the Pac-12 bowl setup, you can take a team with one fewer win than somebody else. So the Alamo Bowl, I think, because of USC, would choose them over a 10-win team. Although, if that is 9-3 USC, I don't think Caleb Williams is playing in that game.
I doubt it. Yeah, I highly doubt it. Gosh, let's just pause and just appreciate the beauty of 100% of Sooner Nation getting behind OSU for a football game.
Exactly.
That'll happen, man.
Yeah, first and last for everything, I guess.
It might be a full 100-0.
You may have OU fans come to the game. They won't wear orange, but they'll come to the game. Yeah.
Well, dude, if it would beat Lincoln Riley, I know how twisted it's gotten here, man. If anything to help the cause, I mean, they'll put the Pistol Pete boxers on if it's worth another field goal in that game. I'm not kidding. It's out of hand. It's nuts. So, all right. You have time for a couple of exit questions before we let you loose?
Sure.
That'd be cool.
If anyone's still awake, I'll take a couple more questions.
I was told you'd be a ratings driver. and I
I
thrust that.
am. I am down.
I, I had Antonio Morales real quick. I had Antonio Morales of the Athletic on.
Yeah.
Beat writer covers USC out there. And this was after the Notre Dame beat the Trojans. We taped the pod. Then USC lost to Utah, and that thing. I feel bad for Antonio because we were talking about with the breakdowns in the Notre Dame game, but now it's gotten like a 90% renewal rate just because of what happened against Utah
Yeah.
last week.
Yeah.
So, hey, real quick, I ask anyone who's been in the business long enough and seen a lot more than I have. What's the best college football game you've personally seen or maybe
Oh
covered?
God. Man, I wish I would have known beforehand because I would have
I
tried to
know.
remember one. The best one I've seen is probably, sorry OU fans, the Boise State
Yeah,
OU
yeah,
Fiesta Bowl.
yeah.
Um, just because of the back and forth of that game, um, that was incredible. God, I hate to do this. I
No,
honestly
no, no.
don't
It's
know.
not. It's okay. Element of surprise works in my favor, but not in the guests, and that's for my
Yeah, I
shame.
mean, there's I could name 5 Bedlam games off the top of my head, but I don't know if I'd put them above you know some other national title games or different things like that. So
What's top of your head? What's your favorite Bedlam game of all time? And it can be as an alum. I mean, it doesn't have to be as a journalist. I mean, is there one you attended as a student that still
uh
is vivid?
I will make this very not my favorite, just most memorable. In 76 I was there, Terry Miller. I was an OU fan. Terry Miller went 72 yards on the third play of the game. I was a you know little kid rooting for OU. My heart was broken by Terry Miller. I got to see him in Las Vegas last year at the College Football Hall of Fame induction. I reminded him of that, but then we had a drink to celebrate because he's an Oklahoma State guy.
Yeah.
Can I say Okie State like not a derogatory term, but I know people get upset about that. To me, it's a loving term, but I won't use it again. 1995, Oklahoma State beats Oklahoma for the first time since that 1976 win. And yes, I
Yeah.
still have a bumper sticker here from
Look
that
at that.
year,
Look at that.
1995. It simply says Oklahoma State 12 because OU didn't score, to which all my friends tell me that was actually the cumulative average ACT score of incoming students. They may be right. 1983 at Oklahoma State, Tim Lasher onside kick off Chris Rockin's helmet. Scott Case recovers. Sooners win 21-20. Lasher, of course, was supposed to kick it deep. Didn't help hear Switzer change the play. I was at the Ice Bowl in 85, froze to death, watched OU win.
Yeah.
The most memorable probably was an OU win in 1988.
Hmm.
Brent Parker. I'm in a
Oh, poor
restaurant.
Brent. Yeah.
I'm in a restaurant in Tampa, Florida, watching the game. Gundy throws the pass. It bounces off Brent Parker's hands. I stand up and yell, "Oh, Budge!" And the owner of the restaurant says, "You need to leave." So
Nuh-uh.
yeah, it was the game kicked at like 2:30 Eastern time. I think I was in Tampa, so when we got there, it wasn't the crowded, but then like the dinner crowd had come in, and so it's just me and some buddies watching the game. And by the time it went final, it was around 6:30 or 7 dinner time, and it kind of packed in, and there were some children there, and they said, "Hey, it's time to go." So yeah, but then my favorite Oklahoma State win when I was actually an Oklahoma State fan was 2011. Oklahoma State won the Big 12 title. I covered that game for CBS Sports.
Mm-hmm.
44-10, and you mentioned my Twitter account. I get a bunch of Twitter responses. My favorite Twitter response of all time, this will never be topped, is I was tweeting something about the game. Oklahoma State dominated that game, and one of the responses was from an Oklahoma fan, and they replied, "Wait till next year." And my head blew up. I said, "Oh my God, an Oklahoma fan just told me to wait till next year. My life is complete. I can die in peace now. So it's just there's so many Stoops kicking deep to Hill,
kicking the Tyreek Hill.
yeah, repunt. I mean, yeah, there's a billion of those. Oklahoma has won the majority of them, I understand, but boy, you sure don't want to lose that last one. That's going to leave a bad taste in somebody's mouth.
Yeah, you're going to be there, you say, right? Of course
I
you
will
are.
be there covering it for the Action Network. Yeah, 2 weeks, can't wait. You got a weather forecast for me yet? Is it too far out?
Well, I'm assuming that it's going to be more pleasant. This weekend doesn't look good at all. I'm off to Lawrence, where it might be 45 if we're lucky, and drizzly. Wow. So all of a sudden, we bypassed fall and gone right to early winter here in Oklahoma. So I hope that cold front is moved onward and outward by a week from Saturday in Stillwater. I think 11 a.m. Right? They haven't announced it yet, but we're all on the 11 a.m. track, I think, for kick time.
No, I disagree. I think if
you think it's going to be
if Oklahoma and Oklahoma State win this week, I think it's a 7 p.m. kick.
So it's not on so it's
be
not
on
Fox
ESPN, game? Right?
That's what
it's not. To be honest, I saw the time slots from the Big 12. I didn't look at the networks.
Okay.
So yeah, if Fox is locked in, then yeah, it's 11 a.m., which I would hate. Yeah. If Fox is not locked in and it's ESPN, then I think it's going to be it would be a 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock local kick.
It feels like it deserves, the lights treatment at Boone Pickens. If this is really going to be it for a while, so we'll just see for ourselves. The window's the window, and it'll expire on Monday, and we'll know. Well, we'll know before Monday, but for now, as we talk here, we don't know. We just know it's going to be crazy. That's what we know.
Yeah.
National College Football Insider for Action Network and Bedlam investor. As a fan and a student and a journalist, Brett McMurphy has been our guest on Mind Games, a weekly presentation of the Sellout Crowd Network. Big thanks to our friends back behind the curtains, Jacquelyn Musgrove for producing, Michael Lane for his creative work. Please download the show, like it, subscribe to the things all the kids do every week, courtesy of iTunes and YouTube and Spotify and Apple and Amazon and wherever else you go. Brett, thanks very much for coming on, man. It's been a pleasure.
You got it. Hopefully I'll see you in Stillwater in a couple of weeks.
You will see me in Stillwater, and we'll see everyone back here next week for another episode of Mind Games with Guerin Emig. Take care.